Welcome to Prime Life. We call it Retirement 2.0. Leave each episode with tips and new ideas to help you navigate retirement in our new age. It's your time. Make it count.
This podcast is for educational purposes only. It is not intended as medical, investment, or financial advice. We do not sponsor or endorse any of the individuals, companies, products, or services featured on this podcast. Any statements or opinions expressed are of the individual who makes them. We hope you enjoy the episode.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Prime Life Podcast. Mary, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I think it's because I'm here with you, Joseph, once again, and of course our guest, which I can't wait to introduce her. She's been on before. She was so great, we brought her back. How about that?
Well, you're too kind to me, and I look forward to you introducing our guest, and let's kick the show off.
Thank you so much, Joseph. Well, today on the Prime Life Podcast, I'd like to introduce or reintroduce Shelley Goldstein. She has over 30 years of senior level management, marketing, and design expertise. She trains global audiences how to powerfully command executive presence and master the art of effective speaking. She works with high-level entrepreneurs and executives. Shelley understands the demands of the evolving workplace, with its increased emphasis on communication skills and leadership, influence, and has helped hundreds of people in over 40 countries across a variety of industries. She's helped them develop skills necessary to be empowering and remarkable speakers. Shelley, welcome to the Prime Life Podcast once again. Tell us a little bit about yourself, where you are, what you've been up to.
Hi, Mary and Joseph. Thank you for bringing me back. It's always a great conversation. You know, there's so much going on around AI. I just did a keynote on this idea of people having a fear that it's interrupting in their lives and their jobs, and how is it that they're going to survive this? And I'm bringing this up today because there is a way for us to not only survive, but really co-pilot with technology and hone in and lean into our curiosity and our creative juices. And I'm working, you asked, tell me a little bit about myself. I am working on that. I am working on leaning into being creative, and how can I challenge the norms of having an overflowing inbox, having so many things to check off my task list. And that's not what I set out to do as a, career. I don't want to check off a list. I want to be innovative and creative. So I'm working on that. And I'm excited to share some of that with everybody today.
So I love AI. I'll put it out there. I know not everyone does. I'm a big fan. I've used a lot of applications and platforms and so forth. But you said a few words which I think are really relevant to our audience, which are curiosity, challenging, creative. Those are all things that people as they age need to challenge themselves to keep their brain going. So maybe you could talk a little bit about how this is an opportunity to kind of combine what's going on in the world with, aging.
Absolutely. When you think about us getting older, when I think about it, sometimes we fear and we want more comfort, and we tend to be less adventurous for whatever reasons. We could make up a million excuses. But if you think of the childlike mindset, that wonderment, that excitement, that curiosity, that learning mechanism, we actually have that ability even more so as we age, because we're maybe focused less on things that held us back earlier in life, our insecurities. We weren't popular enough in school, or we weren't, the the head of our, chemistry club or whatever it was. And now maybe we care a little less about those things. So there's actually more room to explore other things we haven't seen. And I'll just give you an example. My parents are in a senior community. They're 93 and 92. And it was a big change a few years ago, moving them from their independent living to dependent living. How do they do that? And my mother looked around and realized it wasn't that they were just moving, her and my dad were moving into a place where everybody was older and walking slower and sicker. But my mother said, I'm talking to these people and everybody has a story. And the curiosity of asking them questions about their story, where they came from, you realize you're not in a building full of old people. You're in a building full of people that have lived the most amazing lives. And that to me shows at 92, the curiosity doesn't have to stop. We just find new ways of exploring it.
I love that story, Shelley. That's really heartwarming. Your parents sound like they're awesome, like you are. Could you kind of share with our audience, for those individuals who are thinking, oh, that's great to hear, Shelley's parents are, continue to be curious and everyone has a story. How can those individuals perhaps that are maybe feeling a little bit stuck and, not necessarily know how to approach others, especially I know you pointed out in your notes that you sent over about, EQ and the importance. And I know you portrayed that a little bit toward, the work environment, but we all know that emotional intelligence is so critical, and whether it's in our professional life or our personal life. So as we age, how can individuals hone their emotional intelligence skills, and what does that mean for empowering us as we age?
Well, when we think about, I talked a little bit earlier also about AI, and this is really important not only for that, but in our personal lives too, because we want to have the relationships with many generations with the people around us. So when you look at those skills that are going to help us survive AI, help us be curious, it really comes down to critical thinking and problem solving, where we still have that ability to evaluate, to analyze things, to question things. We don't have to take it by rote. That area, those skills are about emotional, intelligence. It's really exploring those areas. How do I feel about something? Not like it just is, but how do I feel about it? How is this going to change my life? Am I mad? Am I upset? And what degree of anger is it? What degree of love is it? And it's all valid. And our reactions, our emotional reactions to things are all very unique to us. So let's embrace that. Let's reach across the table at the person, who may think differently than we do or we don't know about, and share those emotions. What makes you angry about that? I want to learn that, and understanding why people feel the way they do, why their emotions are charging a certain belief or an idea. That leads to curiosity. That leads to expanding your ideas, because maybe you'll learn something. You don't have to agree, but we can learn how somebody else understands something. Because I just heard this great quote from Liz Wiseman, who wrote a book called Rookie Smarts. She says, certainty prohibits learning. Curiosity is what fuels the change. So we don't want to get stuck in our ways. And the way through that is to be curious, ask the questions, lean into what if.
We've had, for people who listen to the show regularly, which I'm sure is everyone, we've covered a lot of topics related to brain health. A lot of things you talked about just now, challenging creativity, are important elements of keeping your mind sharp and, doing the best you can to fight off things like dementia. So highly recommend that. But I'd like to dive a little bit into the stories that you were talking about earlier. And I think a lot of our listeners probably have many, many stories that they can and maybe should be telling other people. So what advice or recommendations do you have for people that may think, oh, I don't have a story, or no one wants my story, or anything along those?
And we'll get that answer after a brief word from our commercial sponsors.
NASA is always working harder to be your carrier of choice. We offer insurance products that can help you meet your retirement goals, such as protecting your savings, securing lifetime income, or paying for healthcare costs. We're dedicated to providing best-in-class service and are keeping things simple, and we'll have your back. We have around 400,000 policyholders and contract holders and have been doing this for a long time, 170 years, but we remain humble enough to always try to improve. For more information, visit nfg.com. NASA insurance products are issued by Nassau Life and Annuity Company of Hartford, Connecticut, Nassau Life Insurance Company, East Greenbush, New York, or Nassau Life Insurance Company of Kansas, Overland Park, Kansas. Subsidiaries of Nassau Financial Group. Products are not available in all areas. Policyholder counts are for all Nassau companies as of September 30th, 2022, and are subject to change.
It's a really good question that I get asked a lot. Nothing happened to me, really. I don't have anything interesting. Well, those of you who are familiar with Seinfeld, a whole show that is running to this day in syndication around the world in I don't know how many languages, is a show about absolutely nothing. And perhaps that's your life too. You watch Seinfeld and you see they bring a whole episode about a handicap spot, about, soup. Well, look at the last 24 hours of your life. Just 24 hours. I'm not asking for a week, a month, 24 hours. And if you think about the micro moments, I spilled my coffee. I was at the market and somebody asked me what I thought about a certain jar of sauce that was in my basket, or somebody called me to say, what do you think of this? Did you see this in the news? There's all different types of little things like that. Now I just mentioned 3 moments, 3 things, 3 stories that happened in your life. I'm sure you also all heard of the phrase, stop and smell the roses. Well, think of what that means. You walk by the garden every day and there's these beautiful flowers. Do we stop and smell that rose? And when we see that one rose, maybe we notice there's another rose next to it that has a slightly different coloration. And maybe we look deeper into the center of that rose and we see there's a little bee doing its thing. And all of a sudden we pull back and there's sunflowers and tulips. And maybe we don't run by that garden anymore of flowers. We now see it for each of the individual blooms that are there. Those are your stories.
So my guess it takes a little bit of practice in creating good habits, positive habits. And it's funny that you said that. I found myself just the other day, I pulled into my driveway and I noticed 2 blue jays on my tree. And I stopped and I was like, look at those beautiful blue jays. And I giggled to myself because I know that I don't always do that. And there was a time in my life where I know I didn't do anything of the sort. And I was kind of curious about why it struck me and why I paused to look at those 2 birds. So I totally love what you just said. And I think that that's a healthy thing to do. But again, I think if you're maybe stuck and you're like, oh, I remember the Seinfeld show, one of my favorites of all time, show about nothing. My life, I don't have anything great to share. Or how do I train myself or create a habit where I do spend more time with family and friends, and I do stop and smell the roses, and I try to again, stop what I'm doing and take in nature or whatever that is that you perhaps overlooked. how can you coach others to take that first step into, again, creating that habit and believing that it will improve their well-being and their mind and all of that and their relationships?
It's absolutely about relationships. And the key is, well, there's a few things you can do. One, I mentioned, reflect back on last 24 hours and see what of the most insignificant, I walked out my front door, I went left instead of right. That's your moment. Try to document the littlest things. I washed the dishes after lunch. Okay. I went out to lunch. That's one thing. You can document it. And if you do that every day, 3 days in a row, you'll notice all these amazing stories. As you write them, you then start to see more of them. That's one way to do it. Another way is think about being super present when you're in a conversation or when you're in a moment. When you're in the car, are you focusing on the road ahead of you? Or are you playing with the radio? Or are you texting somebody through voice command or on the phone? What if we eliminated some of those distractions? Maybe even turned off our phone and just looked straight ahead. And maybe, just maybe when you're in the car, or you could be on a train commuting, wherever it is, turn to somebody and just smile. You can't believe how it could change your day. And all of a sudden you start thinking about the person in the car next to you. Now, if that was in a subway or on a train or in a coffee shop, ask a question. So the key here I'm basically saying is start documenting these moments and look at something, look at it twice, look at it longer, and ask a question of the person before you. They say something, just simply say why. You're in a meeting, raise your hand and say, I really love what you said. How did you come to that conclusion? Like you're asking me today, how can we do this? There are so many places and opportunities we're actually doing a disservice if we don't look at those blue jays. How many moments are we missing by moving too quickly? And in this world where everything's moving very quickly and we keep bringing up AI and other things that are forcing us to take in more information, challenge yourself to turn it off and just sit with what's around you. Stop in front of that garden. How many flowers do you see?
The conversations remind me of two things. One, the idea of random acts of kindness. You kind of alluded to that. So, smiling at someone, doing something nice. That's just feel like that's an important message regardless of the day. And then the old joke, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. So, one step at a time, right? You start documenting your stories, start elaborating on those. I think it's great. So, a lot of the folks who listen to our show are sort of in later years of their life. They may be thinking about retirement. They may be thinking about second careers. Public speaking is always important for storytelling, but communicating in general. What advice would you offer to people who want to go back into the workforce as it relates to speaking?
A quote I just published on my social channels is from Warren Buffett. And he said, the one easy way to become worth 50% more than you are right now, 50%, is to hone your communication skills. It is so important to amplify, to speak up, and through public speaking by asking questions. I mentioned earlier, raise your hand during an all-hands meeting, or maybe there's perhaps a career or a business you want to work for. Call that CEO, call that salesperson, call the person you know, and start asking questions. That's public speaking. And when people learn that you're curious and you engage in a conversation and you're especially asking someone else about their way of doing things, you become more relaxed. You're not in an interview situation. You're now in a conversation. And that is a really good way to build your communication skills. And one of the most important things is asking the question, why? If you are absolutely, gobsmacked, I don't even know what to say, just simply ask why, how? How did you do that? Why did you do that? How did you come to that thought? It's an invitation to develop that conversation. You're allowing the person to feel comfortable and communicate with you. And at the same time, one thing leads to a next, and you are communicating. You're having that public speaking discussion.
So, Shelley, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit because I'm curious. And I think it would help our audience without giving away your secret sauce. What are some, if you could share like maybe one or two exercises that you do with individuals that you work with that you can sort of demonstrate, that would be great to know that. If you could share one or two, that would be really awesome.
I'm happy to share my secret sauce. I did mention two of them already. It's literally the documentation, the journaling. I do that with my clients. I am happy to share that. You literally look at the last 24 hours, set a timer for 2 minutes, and just bullet point what happened, little insignificant things, anything that happened in the day. I had a really good conversation with my nephew. I took the wrong turn down a side street. I ran out of gas. They delivered the wrong windshield wipers for my car. Little things like that. That's the first step. And as I'm using these stories today, I'm pulling back on something that just happened to me the other day. I'm sharing my mother's story about living in a senior center. It's current. It's true. It's top of mind. So that's one exercise. 2 minutes a day. If you have 5 or 8 stories over 5 days, that's 25 to 30 stories. That's a lot of stories you start having. And you can talk about those on the job. The second that I mentioned is, and put this word on your screen, carry it in your wallet, whatever. Why? Just ask that word, ask that question, why? And these are baby steps, simple baby steps. I'm trying not to make it complicated. Give yourself some credit and just try to do these things. Why? Why are we doing it this way? What made you think of that? How come you're choosing A over B? I want to learn. You're making that headway in very small steps. And I'm sharing this with everybody because it really does help.
One thing you didn't mention, and I know when you and I have spoken in the past, it's about personal passion. So maybe give a tip or two, because Mary's going to get to that why question in a couple of minutes. Don't worry, we're going to get to that why question. But before we get there, maybe you can give a tip or two about how to bring out that passion. Right, a lot of people are afraid to show their emotions. Make it too much about themselves. Maybe there's a couple of ideas there that will help our listeners really tell their stories in a more impactful way.
Absolutely. That is a definite next step. And yes, Joseph, we've done a lot of work around this. When you're documenting those little moments, they're your moments. Maybe it's a big moment. Maybe you got a promotion. There's no size of that moment, degree of how important that moment is. It's all good. But those are moments that are unique to you. So when for example, when I'm sharing my stories here today, I'm sharing what I went through. So making it very personal, and you've both mentioned, oh, I love when you shared that story. You enjoyed my stories. Perhaps that's what's going to stick with you. Perhaps as I'm sharing my personal story, you're connecting, saying, oh, yeah, like Mary said, when I was talking about the flowers, oh, yes, I never do this, but the bluebirds. So now we've made a connection. This is tremendous in communication and public speaking. So bringing those two things together, now the conversation starts to really build. Bluebirds, what else do we see? Funny thing happened to me the other day, blah, blah, blah. You realize you have more in common and the conversation flows. So that personal aspect of saying your version of it, or what you heard or what you read or what you experienced, allows us to connect because we start thinking of our own stories. We are humans, and humans are meaning-making machines. We want to connect on meaning, and meaning we make through storytelling. And that's been since the beginning of time.
So, Shelley, as we kind of wind down a little bit, you've had an amazing career. You still have an amazing career. I shouldn't say had, but you've done so many different things, right? And so you wake up every day and you could do really anything that you want. Why do you choose to do what you do?
Wow. The most important thing I realized in my whole different careers, is that they fueled my passion. I truly found great meaning in what I was doing, because starting as a young costume designer, it was being creative. It was expression through creativity. And I had a blank canvas to work from, and it was fun and adventurous, and working my way through marketing and here to public speaking coaching. I'm creative in different ways. It's communication, it's expression, but not only from myself, but helping others to pull out their creative flows. As we're saying today, what's your story? I want to know why you do something. I want to understand more about you, and in getting everybody to become their best expressed selves, share their personal stories, goes back to bringing me great value to what I do. Because we have to be authentic. We have to really build on our emotional intelligence. As humans, it's part of how we function. We want to be expressive. We want to be heard. It's just how we're wired. So if I can help people bring that out, like all the other jobs I've had in my life, it's really just about feeling good about helping others feel confident in how they create, and how they present, and how they communicate. That brings me joy.
Well, thank you very much, Shelly. How can people get in touch with you, or can I learn more about you? Well, I'll, of course, put all this in the show notes, but
a simple, very easy website I have is called speakingresource.com. Speakingresource.com. I have a lot of tip sheets you can download. It's my website. You can connect with me through that channel, and all my channels are posted on it. And if some of you use Linktree, it's Linktree/Shelley Goldstein.
that's pretty straightforward. Thank you very much, Shelly. Mary, been a pleasure. Shelly, thanks again for joining us.
Great.
Look forward to
Be here.
our next episode of the Prime Life podcast. Tune in next week for the next topic. See you all soon.
Remember to subscribe to the Prime Life podcast anywhere you find podcasts. You can find all of our episodes, contact information, and more on our website, primelifepodcast.com. Stay connected with us. Follow us on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok.